Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, may I kindly request you to please have your seats so we start the next side event. Share the news. Okay. Distinguished delegates, may I request your attention, please? Could you please have your seats so we start the next session? Honorable Chief Guest, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, a very warm welcome to this important side event organized by the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. I am Babar Khan, a senior ecosystem management specialist and the coordinator of the action area for building institutions for regional cooperation in the region. It is indeed an honor to be your host and moderator for this event. Before we dive into our discussions, I would like to mention that we have gathered here to address the pressing issues and challenges faced by the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, a region often described as the Asia's water tower and the pulse of our planet. The International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, ICIMOD, being the Knowledge and Learning Center and convener of the regional cooperation, aims to foster understanding and collaboration among the 8 countries of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region to collectively address the triple planetary crisis the HKH is facing. This region is vital for the sustainability of the nearly 2 billion people living in the mountains, hills, valleys, and plains in the river basins downstream. To begin with, please join me in welcoming Ms. Isabella Kozil, the Deputy Director General of ICIMOD, for the welcome note and setting the stage for today's discussion. Isabella.
Thank you. And on behalf of ICIMOD, I wish you all a very warm welcome to this event. Welcome to honourable ministers, excellencies, and distinguished delegates joining us today, as well as to those joining us online. And thank you for joining us, and to UNEP for providing us with this opportunity to discuss how to respond to the triple planetary crisis that is hitting our Hindu Kush Himalayan region so hard. This is a critical mountain biome which up to now has received far less global and regional attention. Over the last years, and together with our valued partners, our regional member countries that comprise of 8 countries, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, China, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, we have been collectively working very hard to determine a route forward for managing the triple planetary crisis at a regional level. We have made every effort to try and customize global commitments through this regional approach in a way that really responds to the issues and challenges of the Hindu Kush Himalaya. We are very glad that you can join us today, and we look forward to sharing our findings, discussing and reflecting on the proposal coming from us together with our regional member countries, and to a very fruitful discussion on the next steps. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Kozil, for your welcome remarks. We will begin today's program with a clear overview of our objectives. For that, I would like to invite Dr. Pam Narayan Kadil, Chief Policy Advisor at ICIMOD, to please elaborate on these objectives and provide insights into the relevance and expectations from this event.
So thank you, Dr. Babar Khan, and good afternoon. Honorable Chief Guest, Dichen Tesring, Regional Director and Representative for Asia and Pacific, UNEP. Honorable Minister from Samoa, yeah. Honorable Special Guest, Honorable Minister Dr. Birendra Prasad Mahato, Minister for Forest and Environment of Nepal. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. The Hindu Kush Himalayan HKH region comprises 4 million square kilometers extended from Myanmar to the east and Afghanistan in the west. It is also important to note that the HKH is the global asset for food, energy, water, carbon, and cultural and biological diversity, provide ecosystem services directly to 240 million people who live in the HKH mountains, and indirectly 1.6 billion people live in the downstream. International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, ICIMOD, is an intergovernmental institution mandated to work for mountain and environment, and also people with its 8 member countries, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, India, Nepal, Myanmar, and Pakistan of Hindu Kush Himalayan region. However, the HKH is one of the region most exposed by triple planetary crisis, that is climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution due to fragile mountain landscape and vulnerable socio-economic context. The ICIMOD led Hindu Kush Himalayan Assessment Report 2019 and Water, Ice, Society and Ecosystem in the HKH Highways Outlook 2022 revealed that climate change is real and 1.5 degrees centigrade is too hot for the region. Due to impact of climate change and extreme climate event, our region is facing climate-induced disaster in different forms and extent, causing huge losses to the economy, ecosystem, and humanity. This region has already witnessed 65% faster melting of snow and glacier than previous decade, leading to increased frequency of water-induced hazards. It is identified as one of the most polluted regions in the world. Rate of ecosystem and biodiversity losses are higher in the region. Excellencies, considering the cascading and transboundary nature of impact and risks, no single country can resolve the HKH crisis alone, and therefore coordinated regional and global efforts are required to address the issues. It is to realize that the most of the challenges that HKH is facing, regional and their impacts are transcend national boundary. So issues are beyond the national boundary. Resolving an interlocking crisis on the scale and of such transboundary nature requires regional cooperation on the unprecedented pace and scale. Regional and global efforts are essential to meet the commitment outlined in international agreement and sustainable development, while safeguarding the livelihood of mountain and downstream people who depend on HKH resources. In this context, ICIMOD has been organizing a side event on regional cooperation for addressing the triple planetary crisis in the HKH at the 5th Forum of Minister and Environment Authority of the Asia Pacific with the objective to set out the ambition for the new high-level regional institution mechanism for the HKH as developed by the HKH High-Level Task Force. Seeking your very invaluable input and advice on high-level regional institutional mechanism which is proposing to establish in the region. ICIMOD has advanced on its journey to develop the high-level regional institutional mechanism, which will play a pivotal role in fostering cooperation and collaboration among HKH countries to address the unprecedented challenge that region is facing. ICIMOD policy, strategy, and plan are aligned to address the triple planetary crisis, is committed to supporting its Yet, HK as a regional member country to address the issue and challenges emerging from this crisis through knowledge, innovation, policy, and partnership. On behalf of ICIMOD, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to you all, particularly the dignitary, the UNEP directors, and also our Honorable Minister from Palau, and other dignitary for your very gracious participation in this important side event. Your input would be the instrumental to high-level regional mechanical proposed for the SKS region to resolve the triple planetary crisis in the region. I welcome you all in this important side event, and I thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kadil, for outlining our goals for today's discussion. To shed some more light on the coordinated approach being undertaken by ICIMOD, together with its regional member countries, the 8 HKH countries, I would like to invite Ms. Isabella Kozil to give a presentation on ICIMOD's journey to fostering regional cooperation for addressing the increasing crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region.
So thank you. I'm going to start this presentation with a very short story. The image that you see on this slide is of the collection of the Yasha Gumba caterpillar fungus. This image is actually from Nepal, but obviously this caterpillar fungus is collected in many other parts of the Hindu Kush Himalaya. It is extremely valuable. It has multiple medicinal properties. Recently, the University of Oxford actually confirmed that it has some benefits in terms of cancer cures. And these are people who are living on the front line, who eke out a living in this high altitude environment. The collection of this fungus is extremely risky. I think in Bhutan, several people died this year due to a landslide that was caused whilst they were collecting the caterpillar fungus, but probably largely caused because the permafrost is melting and thawing, and so these hillsides are far more risky. But to me, the overall message is here that these high altitude environments are extremely valuable for many, many reasons. And yet global climate change, global environmental change is hitting these environments very hard. And globally, we are not really focused on this issue. So we are going to be talking today about how we can take the next steps towards working towards resolving some of these challenges. And we're going to be talking about how we can work more effectively regionally to address this triple planetary crisis, with a view to ensuring that these communities and countries who are living at the front line are better equipped and resourced to deal with this crisis. And so we'll talk a little bit about ICIMOD, about the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, and ICIMOD's journey that we've taken together with our regional member countries to institutionalize regional cooperation, and how this will help us deliver on the UN Sustainable Development Goal commitments. So ICIMOD, we work for the mountains together with our 8 regional member countries. Here you have the countries on the slide, and we've already mentioned who they are. And together we call ourselves the power of 8. We are governed and we serve the 8 countries of the Hindu Kush Himalaya. We are a regional and intergovernmental organization, and we're focused very much on building knowledge and learning on how to respond to these crises. And we recently, last year, had our new strategy approved. We are operating now. This is the first year of our strategy, and we have 3 fundamental focus areas: 1 on risks, 1 on economies, and 1 on enabling regional and global mechanisms for sustainable mountain development. And we'll be talking largely today about the regional agenda. And of course, the Hindu Kush Himalayan region is of fundamental global importance. It's a huge global asset. It contains the 3rd largest ice mass after the poles. It is the source of 10 of Asia's major rivers. It holds 4 of the world's global biodiversity hotspots. And collectively, these resources support 250 million people living in the mountains and 1.6 billion living downstream. So that's almost 2 billion people, 1/4 of humanity, that rely on this region. And yet, this is a region that is at the front line of the triple planetary crisis. And let's just reflect on that for a moment. That means 2 billion people are at risk. And we have been working on understanding these challenges better. We published 2 major landmark reports, and these reports collate research from right across the region. These are not just ICIMOD publications, but they bring the best of the science and research from across the region. And we had one that focused very much on what is happening. It set a baseline in 2019, and then in this year, 2023, we published the sequel to this assessment, which looked very much at how is the changes in the glaciers, the snow, and the permafrost affecting people, society, economies, and ecosystems. And there are some staggering findings. It is found that at current emission trends, we may lose up to 80% of the volume of glaciers by 2100. That's only 73 years away. When I was in Bhutan recently, we walked up to 5,000 meters. Most of the glaciers are gone up there. I was shocked. I sometimes wonder whether we've even got to 2100. We know also that glaciers have disappeared faster than ever before. This is not just happening in the HKH, it's also happening in all the other mountain regions. We know that water will peak in 2050. That's only 27 years away. And after that, water will decline. We've got multiple species, adjustments, changes, extinctions, and of course, floods and landslides will increase. And current funding flows are just simply inefficient. And regional cooperation and international finance is absolutely vital if we are to implement urgent near-term adaptation and loss and damage that is so badly needed for this region. And so I spoke about water. There will be too much, and there already is, sometimes too much water and sometimes too little. Disaster risk is increasing. There are huge implications on this. 1/3 of the disasters are floods. Many cross national borders with huge implications, and more than 1 billion people are at risk of exposure. And we also know that some of the most vulnerable are women, children, the elderly, and the disabled. Repeated disasters like this mean that people also have to move. Where will they move to? We've seen so many floods this year. These examples are from India, but we've had disasters in Nepal, disasters that have never happened before. So these are increasing in frequency with enormous economic implications. And of course, the humanitarian consequences of these disasters are already significant, but they will be enormous in the future. So whether this is to do with declining water availability, the impacts that has on energy and food security, increasing disasters, and the fact that those financial flows are simply not coming fast enough or of sufficient volume. And yet we seem to be continually stuck in this current mass of not being able to get sufficient funding. Highland ecosystem services, again, extremely valuable. They are threatened, they are declining, whether this is the quality of pasture land for the yak herders, or whether this is the quality of the watersheds and spring sheds, and which supplies vital water resources downstream. Wetlands and riparian systems are extremely vulnerable, and agrobiodiversity is in steep decline, which of course we all know has huge implications on nutritional security and health. Land degradation with declining ecosystems, the incidence of landslides is increasing. When permafrost starts to thaw, there will be yet more landslides, and of course there are also the implications of increased emissions such as methane and carbon from permafrost thaw. And of course, accelerating species decline and extinctions. So these issues are real, they're happening, and only set to get worse. And of course, pollution. Our region is one of the most polluted in the world. This has implications not only for black carbon deposition on the glaciers and enhanced melting, but also enormous implications for human health. There is increasing evidence in terms of the very detrimental consequences of long-term exposure to poor quality air. And of course, solid and liquid waste choking our rivers. Malnutrition is rampant, and of course, the poverty levels within the mountain regions are higher than outside them. So many multiple challenges, and of course, there are many responses that are ongoing already at a national level. However, most of these challenges cannot be resolved by a single country alone. It is essential that, given the transboundary and public good nature of these enormous assets, that we need to move forwards in amongst the support that we give at a national level, but also we need to operate at a regional level. It is also very important that at a regional level, we can translate those global commitments into meaningful issues, approaches, and responses that are meaningful to the specific context of the region. And so we are calling for a regional approach as well to address climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution. And so we have been moving on a journey over the last few years to institutionalize this regional approach, institutionalize regional cooperation in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. And in 2020, there was a landmark moment during the COVID pandemic. We had our first ministerial mountain summit, and this was built on the HKH call to action, which led to a ministerial declaration to take this institutionalization of a regional approach forward. Our HKH call to action remains valid and active, and these are the 6 urgent actions that collectively the region agreed to move forward on. And as we've moved forward, we have also taken these 6 urgent actions into our strategy. And you will see that there is strong language here around cooperation at all levels, recognizing the uniqueness of the HKH region, taking concerted climate action to keep global warming to 1.5. We're now beginning to say that maybe 1.5 is still too hot for our region, but actually we should be pushing for below 1.5, and that we must take accelerated actions, enhance ecosystem resilience, whilst also sharing vital data and information to enhance the responses. Our ministers agreed to hold biennial ministerial mountain summits. The next summit will be in February 2024, and to promote a united voice for the HKH, to hold multi-stakeholder HKH science policy forums regularly. We just completed our Cryosphere Science Policy Forum last week, and these forums are to produce the evidence that is actionable and that can be delivered and translated into policy and investment. And we also were requested to constitute a high-level task force to take these recommendations forward, and with ICIMOD to serve as the secretariat. So since 2020, we have been working together with our high-level task force, which represents the 8 countries of the Hindu Kush Himalaya, and we have been meeting regularly, discussing and learning, particularly about other mechanisms, for instance, the Alpine Convention and the Arctic Council. We've been seeking advice, we've been meeting in Austria to again understand how these kinds of mechanisms work in other regions. And so that we've been continuing on this journey until this year, in June 2023, we met in Bhutan and we re-reviewed the draft high-level task force recommendations on the high-level institutional mechanism for the HKH. And we co-drafted the ministerial declaration on the recommendation for the high-level institutional mechanism, and the high-level task force members unanimously agreed to submit the final draft report and declaration to our regional member country governments for their review and endorsement. And this is now the report that has been submitted. It has been submitted to all our Hindu Kush Himalaya country governments, and they are now in the process of reviewing this report. And so what is next? So we will continue to facilitate and coordinate science policy dialogues so that we can produce the evidence and the science that stimulates the demand for regional engagement and protocols. And we will be presenting the recommendation report to the second ministerial summit that will take place in February 2024. And we will be taking this forward to the ministers for their approval. And so what does the recommendation look like? So we are proposing, this is the proposal that we have on the table for now, that there will be an HKH, a Hindu Kush Himalayan Council, which comprises of 8 member states, the 8 members of our board of governors of ICIMOD. So you see the countries here on the slide: Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, India, Myanmar, Nepal, and Pakistan. And there will be a rotating presidency of the HKH Council that will rotate on a 2-year basis. So there will be a 2-year term for the presidency, up to a maximum of 2 terms. And the presidency will be supported by a permanent committee that will be comprised of designated senior officials from each of the Hindu Kush Himalayan countries, who will in turn be supported by a series of thematic working groups, for instance, on air, on biodiversity, on adaptation. And these thematic working groups will be working up how across the region these issues can be managed at the regional level. ICIMOD will be the secretariat to this process. And of course, we will be inviting observers. And the functions and the deliverables of this council will be the mountain summits, the science policy dialogues and forums, as well as periodic thematic assessments on specific issues, so that we have the vital evidence base on which to build robust responses. And finally, this approach is also targeted at supporting the region to help achieve the UN Sustainable Development Agenda. It responds directly to the UNGA resolution on sustainable mountain development, as well as several SDGs, the Kunming-Montreal Global Framework targets, and of course the Paris Agreement. And of course, it will provide a platform for regional and international and local partners to articulate what needs to be done. So finally, thank you for listening. We must keep mountains on the global agenda. The implications are vast in terms of sea level rise. I know we have some small island states here, but the implications go beyond that. They are global as well. So we're running a campaign now, Save Our Snow. We're taking this to COP28. Please look it up online, sign our declaration, send in your stories of change. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kozil, for enlightening us about the HKH High-Level Task Force recommended regional institutional mechanism for the Hindu Kush Himalayan countries. Let's take a break here for 15 minutes to discuss some key questions, not more than 3. If there are any burning questions to our Deputy Director General Isabella's presentation, let's have a brief discussion before we move to the closing session. First come, first serve, 3 questions at maximum. Please briefly introduce yourself and then, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Sang-Min Nam. I am Director of Environmental Development Division of UN SCAP. It's great to see the development about this institutional development with regard to Hindu Kush Himalayan. And you highlighted that the new institutional system and then also observer status. So I'm wondering whether it is also open to UN bodies to join as observer. That's my first question. And second question is, now with the UN's new resolution that designate 2025 as an International Year of Glacier Preservation initiated by Tajikistan. So we could also explore partnership beyond the Hindu Kush Himalayan. Of course, your own work is more important to really look at the situation or address the issue. So I would like us to ask you whether there is possibility for inter-regional cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, I think we will certainly consider having UN agencies as observers. So thank you for that comment. As we move forwards, the team will look at what the criteria will be together with the high-level task force regarding observers and the UN. Secondly, on the International Year of Glacier Preservation, yes, we're very much aware of that. We joined a meeting in Paris that was hosted, I think, by UNESCO. So we're very keen to take this year forward as also a critical milestone for global awareness of what is happening and the call to respond to that globally, the challenges. So we're very keen to discuss that further with UN SCAP in terms of how we can collaborate on these issues in terms of the interregional cooperation that you mentioned. So thank you for that. Thanks.
Thank you. Very interesting talk. I'm from Suzhou in China. It's a city close to Shanghai, and my research is ecology. So my question is related to biodiversity. For Save Our Snow, I think very important topic. And I think the next step, maybe do some kind of work for biodiversity protection or monitoring. So for Save Our Snow, any kind of further consideration is very challenging. Biodiversity, like some mammal and some low animals, even some microbial. This kind of very important, unique ecosystem. So any kind of consideration. So this is kind of just curious. I know you.
Thank you for flagging that issue. So yes, of course, whilst rising snow line and declining snowfall has an impact on biodiversity, perhaps the focus isn't centrally on biodiversity there. We are proposing having a thematic working group on biodiversity, recognizing that there are significant changes in the mountain region. As I mentioned, biodiversity, species extinctions, but also dramatic changes in terms of invasive species and new species coming into the region. So there will be a working group on biodiversity as well. Thank you.
There are two questions from the online participants. The first question is from Humayun. He asks, in regional activity, Afghanistan is not included. Isn't this part of the high-level consultations? Yeah.
So my understanding is that Afghanistan has been included and is a member of the high-level task force and have been contributing to the discussions. Afghanistan was also contributing online to the Science Policy Forum on Cryosphere last week. So yes, Afghanistan is included. Thank you.
And the second question from our online participant, Zegam Habib from Pakistan, is, can you please briefly comment on Pakistan's contribution, especially in the institutional setup?
So thank you for that question from Pakistan. So Pakistan is also a member of the high-level task force and has been contributing to this whole set of dialogues and discussions as well. So rest assured, Pakistan is also part of the high-level task force and will be part of the high-level mechanism as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabella, for responding the questions of our participants here and those who are attending this event online. Now we are privileged to hear from the honorable ministers and heads of delegates of the ICIMOD HKH regional member countries. Their perspectives are invaluable in shaping the future of this critical region. We had the honor of having with us some of the distinguished and very honorable ministers with us, especially from Nepal, and we were expecting Deputy Minister from Bangladesh also. For some reason, I could not see her around. So I will start with Bhutan. Normally at ICIMOD, we have a tradition of inviting the speakers for remarks in alphabetical order, so forgive me for that. So I will invite Ms. Chuki Wangmo, Chief of the Environment Assessment and Compliance Division, the Department of Environment and Climate Change, Government of Bhutan. I think she is not around. Second very special guest is from India, Ms. Namita Prasad. Again, I don't see if she is here in this hall. So let me now invite His Excellency Dr. Brindra Prasad Mahato, Cabinet Minister, Ministry of Forests and Environment, Government of Nepal. Sir.
Regional Director of UNEF for the Asia and Pacific, Your Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, ICIMOD colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to ICIMOD for organizing this event and inviting me as guest in the side event on regional cooperation and addressing the triple planetary crisis in the Hindu Kush Himalayan. Previous speakers have already highlighted the vulnerability of mountain regions to climate change and cryosphere crisis. A rapid melting of snow, ice, and glacier mean increasing magnitude and frequency of disasters for the population downstream. Due to extreme climate events, our region is facing climate-induced disasters in different forms and extent, causing huge loss in the economy, ecosystem, and humanity. We cannot forget the disaster of Melamchi, Nepal in 2021, the devastating flood of Pakistan in 2022, the similar floods with mass landslides in the north state of India, the recent glacial lakes outburst in Bhutan and their impact on human casualty and economy. ICIMOD, as an intergovernmental institution, has made outstanding achievements in generating science-based knowledge, information, and innovation for the mountain ecosystem over the last 4 decades. The impacts have been reflected in the form ICIMOD's contribution to advance-based policy information of the regional members countries and in creating global attention of the challenges, contentability, and opportunity of sustainable mountain development. I believe it is already late to take urgent action needed to minimize the impact of climate change. This action will only be possible if stakeholders from multiple sectors of the society join hands together, cooperate and collaborate with each other and with a united voice. As this impact of climate change are not limited to national boundaries, but rather are at transboundary scale, the need for working together is without any choice to tackle the 3 planetary crises of climate change: biodiversity, loss, and pollution. In the past couple of years, significant achievements have been made to strengthen the regional cooperation. A ministerial delegation of the HKH call to action was signed in October 2020 during the first ministerial mountain summit, where ministers of the 8 countries of the region came together and agreed to cooperate and collaborate on urgent issues and challenges that this region is facing. I am also very happy to learn that a recommendation report on the feasibility of establishing a regional instrumental mechanism, the HKH, has already been submitted by the HKH high-level task force to the HKH countries for their review and approval. Continuing the support provided by the government of Nepal since the establishment of ICIMOD, and as the Minister of the Ministry of Forest and Environment of Nepal, I extend my full support in the implementation of past declaration and confirm my participation in the incoming Ministerial Mountain Summit in 2024. The high-level task force members and its secretarial ICIMOD have been instrumental in carrying forward the agreement of the declaration. To tackle the pertinent issue the region is facing, countries of the region must come together as the impact of the climate and cryosphere change are transnational in nature. The government of Nepal has prioritized cooperation with its neighbors on issues related to climate change, environmental degradation, disaster risks, reduction, biodiversity, conservation, economics, and livelihood improvements. Ladies and gentlemen, I therefore seek cooperation among us to join hands and act together to strengthen the resilience of this fragile but important region. I also urge to continue the noble work of generating policy relevant advance. As the host country for ICIMOD, the government of Nepal is offering full support for the work that ICIMOD is doing in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. I wish you success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mato, for your kind remarks. We are also honored to have a very special guest with us, host also, whose presence and insights will undoubtedly enrich our discussions. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Dichin Siring, the Regional Director and Representative for the Asia and Pacific at the United Nations Environment Program. Dr. Siring, over to you.
Honorable Minister Mato, Deputy DG Isabella Coziel, I think I have a presentation that will come online. So it really is a pleasure to talk about ICIMOD, the International Center of Integrated Mountain Development, and to talk about UNEP's participation. And I see many friends in this room who know ICIMOD well, but I think from UNEP's perspective, some of the earliest work that was done on glacial lake outburst floods were actually done by ICIMOD. And ICIMOD has always played a really important role in a very complex geopolitical environment, and they've always managed to have sort of scientific institutions sharing data across countries, even during the most difficult time, and it really plays such an important role. I think Isabella already made a really strong case about what's at stake. So you talk about climate, you talk about nature, you talk about pollution and waste, and I think the issue that we're really talking about fresh water sources of the 10 largest rivers in Asia. And there's a lot of work that's actually now being done, and maybe this is a good time to bring it in on something called climate altering technologies. And every time you've had a volcanic, there's been a volcano blast, and then when you've looked at the temperature, the world's actually cooled. So there's a lot of studies in terms of, could we do this at a large enough scale? And there's at the next UN Environment Program, we produced a report called One Atmosphere. And if you have time, you should look at the climate altering technologies. We are looking at what kind of scientific assessments do we need, what kind of governance. And so this really becomes pertinent. So again, UNEP's focus, and we go back into the same areas. But if I look at the Living Indus, this is what the UN system in Pakistan, together with the government of Pakistan, has looked at. And it's really looking at investing in ecological restoration. It's looking at the ecological health of the Indus, looking at the climate impacts, nature. You're looking at the fact that 90% of Pakistani people live and the economy, 3/4 of the economy is based in this basin. And maybe it's a move that we start to think about isolated interventions, and we come together around the government, around the UN system, to invest in ecological restoration. This is the year of the decade for ecosystem restoration. And if you think of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, it is 30% protected areas, 30% restoring degraded land, and of course, the 30 billion by 2030. And if you think of the multilateral environmental agreements, I mean, these are many of the ones are related to nature, and you see the linkages with the Hindu Kush mountain areas. You talk about the nature, the pollution conventions, and of course, you talk about the climate change conventions. But more and more we're realizing is that, effective adaptation responses, a lot of them are regional, a lot of them are sub-regional. The IPCC Working Group on Mountains found that regional cooperation, transboundary governance in mountain regions supported by multi-scale knowledge networks, monitoring programs, enable long-term adaptation efforts. I mean, one of the strengths with ICIMOD is the work with science-based institutions in the 8 regional member countries. They also work with a lot of communities looking at livelihood. So it really is a holistic approach. The Swiss-funded adaptation at altitude program, here ICIMOD, CONSAN, and UNEP are regional partners. We're also talking about, there's a lot of interregional exchange, action learning amongst these regional mountain governance. So if you think of some of the messages we're talking about, you've already heard about the impacts of, the adverse impacts for nature, for climate, for pollution in the mountain ecosystem. But regional and international cooperation and policy alignment is critical to achieve a sustainable, resilient future. And what ICIMOD is able to do, ICIMOD has been able to maintain a brain trust for the sub-region, and it's also been able to maintain sort of the technical expertise and also building the capacity of regional member countries. They've talked about, Isabella has put forward, the Hindu Kush mountains in crisis, but they're also mountains of opportunity if we scale up investment in green, resilient, inclusive development. And here again, the call is for inclusive development. I think UNEP stands very ready to support the Hindu Kush Council and the high-level task force. But I hope, we value the science policy dialogues and thematic assessments, but I think it'd be really important if we can make sure that they were access, to science institutions, and we're able to have access to information. So you broaden it. I think it's important that, we have a ministerial mountain summit. That's important, but there must be a way. And so for us, UNEP, the last 2 days we had the Youth Environment Assembly Forum. Today we have the Asia Pacific major groups. And then we have the Science Policy Business Forum. I think the more inclusive we can be, the more we can leverage. I think intergovernmental processes are critical, but we have to bring in more stakeholders. So on a personal level, as UNEP, we've worked really closely with ICIMOD. And one of personally for me, my most successful places we have contributed is in the Greater Kailash Sacred Landscape Conservation Initiative, where we looked at a transboundary program between India, China, and Nepal. And I think it's still one of the only transboundary cooperation programs. And I've seen that if you're able to build on the science, you're able to work with institutions in the regional member countries, and ICIMOD really is able to take forward many of these issues. So I wish you a lot of success for the Hindu Kush Council. And as my colleague Mr. Salman Nam, the director from SCAP, has said, the UN would be very happy to be as an observer. But I think a call that when you start, engage stakeholders, broaden this so that we can actually have ownership and stakeholders participate. And as you outlined, as the Deputy Director General outlined, I mean, how we manage the Himalayan mountains are going to be critical for water security. And this is going to be critical for peace, for conflict. I mean, we're looking, if we can't stay within a 1.5 degree world, we're looking at resource scarcity, we're looking at droughts, we're looking at famine. So I think it's going to be really important that we manage the water resources well. So I wish you much success, and UNEP always stands ready to support ICIMOD. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sering, for your insightful remarks, and also for extending your kind support for this very important initiative. As we are moving towards the last segment of this site event, but before I invite my colleague, Dr. Nakul Chetri, for the conclusions, we got a couple of very important questions from our online participants. So I would request Isabella to quickly please respond to them so we move forward.
Thank you, and thank you to those online who have sent in some very interesting questions. But before I attempt to respond to them, thank you very much, Dechen, for your call to broaden this whole initiative to a wider set of stakeholders, and of course vital other fora such as this one. So we'll certainly take that into consideration as we move forwards with our high-level task force. So in terms of the questions, so we have one here. As HKH is so unique, can there be a treaty with some binding objectives and outcomes for all the countries in the region, even as we carry out more research? Difficult question to answer. Now, of course, we have to take these processes step by step. We already have multiple global commitments that are translated to the national level. And so very much the HKH Council is more about coordinating and facilitating the delivery of those global commitments at the national and regional levels. So for now, our proposal is more around the council and looking at how we can take that forward, not in a legally binding way. That can be much more challenging. So next question, can you comment on how the Hindu Kush Himalayan region and ICIMOD is approaching and managing transboundary climate risks and the impacts of these on downstream countries? Again, a very important question. I mean, our response is very much around this regional mechanism approach, and the HKH Council to at least begin to trigger that dialogue on how we can manage what is this transboundary public good and the risks that come from it. Of course, there are already some efforts to look at early warning across borders. And so we are moving forwards together with our countries on these issues. Another question, all activities should not be restricted to talks. What activities are taking place at the grassroots level to build resilience? Yes, here we are in a forum where we do need to discuss these issues. The regional mechanism is one of our initiatives. We have many other initiatives that we are working through with our regional member countries, which are more grounded, which look at how we can develop the right kinds of solutions and investments for building resilience. So this is one of our proposals. There are other activities that are taking forward that are more grounded. So every year, floods and landslides, disasters impact on life, property and environment in the HKH. ICIMOD is actually working on it, but what can you do better? The result is still negative. Obviously, these are enormous challenges, and together with our countries, we are doing what we can, but the challenge to really minimize disasters is quite significant. And again, we have to take a step-by-step approach. And we are also working on this initiative to bring in additional funding, investment, which we call the Mountains of Opportunity Investment Framework. But currently, finance flows are simply inefficient into this region to assist with these challenges that have been largely caused by global warming, not by the region itself. Finally, we have a question on springs. Springs and spring rivulets are the main source of water for drinking, irrigation, and household consumption in hills and mountain regions of Nepal, and they are dwindling and drying. People are compelled to migrate in some cases. This should be one agenda to be addressed in the HKH. Yes, we are working on springs. It's one of our focus areas within one of our strategic groups. And I think that comes to the end of the questions. How ICIMOD practices regional climatic hazards to mitigate climate resilience. Well, we're working at the regional level and also the global level. And final question, Kashmir is the region with very high topographical variations, and so is the climate. One can adapt to climate change happening all over the world, but the weather variability and extreme events are becoming more and more significant in this region. How can these be combated? Is there any mechanism of working together so that regions like ours are also considered for solutions? Well, thank you very much for that question. Again, the way that ICIMOD works is we are a regional knowledge and information center. So please do visit our website. Please do contact us from these more remote regions. We like to hear from you, and we're happy to help where we can by working with our governments. So thank you for those fantastic questions to all those online. Back to you, Baba. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isabella, for responding to some of the questions raised by our participants who are attending the event online. Just to reflect back on stakeholder engagement and consultation, for the information of the audience here, I would like to share that we had a regional science policy forum last week in Kathmandu, and Honorable Minister Dr. Mahato chaired the forum, and there were more than 100 participants from the region and from other parts of the globe. The interesting thing was this opportunity brought together researchers, scientists, policymakers, practitioners, and professionals to discuss the mountain issues, particularly with a focus on the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. But another important aspect was we had also the honor to having our representatives, including from UNEP, working in other mountain regions of the world, like the South Caucasus, Arctic, Andes, and Alpine regions. to seek their knowledge and advice to see how we can benefit from their learnings and experiences to establish this regional cooperation mechanism for the Hindu Kush Himalaya area. It was very interesting, very enriching, and very useful in a way that the recommendations given by the delegates in that science policy forum are quite comprehensive, and ICIMOD as the secretariat is working on them to refine them further and take them to the ministerial summit, hopefully in early 2024. Without taking much of your time, I would like to invite my colleague, Dr. Nakul Chatri, Senior Biodiversity Specialist at ICIMOD, to please provide closing remarks and extend a word of thanks to all our participants and contributors here and online as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baba Khan. Honorable Chief Guest, Excellencies, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's my honor and privilege to bring some of the highlights that we heard from previous presentations and discussions. I would like to bring to your notice what I observe in terms of the messages that we got. First and foremost is mountains are global assets. So they provide us food, energy, water, biodiversity, ecosystem services, and also cater 1/3 of the humanity in our region as well as at the global level. But as it was also mentioned that there is complexity in geography, complexity in geopolitical perspectives, and we need a very smart means of addressing this thing. There is implications when these mountains, which are sensitive to climate change, sensitive to biodiversity loss, and sensitive to pollutions, are facing challenges. And unfortunately, the challenges are much more higher because the warming rate in the mountains are higher than elsewhere. They have implications. They have implications to society. They have implications to our well-being, and also they have implications to reaching the Sustainable Development Goals. And we need actions which are practical, doable, and reachable to balance conservation and development as well as addressing challenges. It was reiterated that a regional approach is needed because all these triple climatic change or challenges are regional in nature. It goes much more beyond national boundaries. ICIMOD is taking the initiatives as it is mandated to be a regional organization to bring 8 regional member countries together, address in terms of research and science diplomacy to highlight some of the challenges. And now we are in a process of bringing some mainstreaming mechanism to address through actions at the regional level through institutionalizing a process or mechanism to address these challenges to actions. As it was already mentioned that we have gone through a systematic process of highlighting some of the issues and challenges through our very comprehensive research work, then develop a mechanism that is proposed to some of our member countries, and then the ministerial declaration, high-level task force, which are helping us to come up with a guidance so that we can highlight those issues and then bring into mainstreaming process of reaching to some of the conventions, including UNFCCC, Convention on Biological Diversity, and also contributing to Sustainable Development Goals. As it was indicated, that this process will take us through and will be reaching in 2024, where this approach and mechanism will be proposed to our member countries through ministerial meeting, second ministerial summit. And it was also mentioned that it is important for us to bring more and wider stakeholders for ownership and making it more practical. However, these mechanisms will be meaningful when all national, regional, and global players are coming together to make it more practical. And as it was also mentioned that there are other good examples that our partners and organizations are doing. For example, the Living Indus, where we can learn from and also get guidance from the good practices. It is also reiterated that a very strong partnership, inclusive partnership at all levels are needed, and our regional member countries have been supporting us since last 40 years, and this support and other support from other organizations, including UNEP and global partners, development organizations, including donors, are required to make it happen and address these challenges. So these are the essence that I received from the deliberation. And now I would like to wrap up with extending my vote of thanks. I would like to express my gratitude and appreciation for giving us opportunity to be part of this process, to UNEP, more specifically to Madam Dichen, because right from the day one, she is encouraging us to be part of this process and be part of the whole session and then organize this side event. We are also grateful to Honorable Minister for being with us since couple of months now, being part of some of the very important initiatives and sessions that we have taken forward. More importantly, guiding us, providing us guidance, and also helping us to get through since last 40 years by hosting ICIMOD at Nepal. It is also important for us to acknowledge our regional member countries who have been supporting us for last 40 years to achieve our goals, and with guidance also address some of these issues which are prevailing in the Himalayan region to take at the global platforms. It is also my privilege to acknowledge the support, guidance, mentoring, and every possible help that we receive from UNEP colleagues, including Subrato Sinha and his team, for making it happen and allowing us and giving us platform in this August gathering. Last but not the least, our Director General, Dr. Pema Gamso, have been with us right from the inception of this side event and the preparation, guided by Deputy Director General Isabella Koizol. We have our team, Dr. Prem Kanel and Baba Khan with us, but behind the scene, there is a huge number of people at ICIMOD who are helping us in the process of preparing this side event to make it more successful. So with this, I would like to wrap up this session, and thank you very much for your presence and participation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chetri. With this, we have now reached to the end of our side event. In closing, I express my deepest gratitude to all our participants here and the ones who were able to join us online, the speakers, honorable ministers, and the chief guest, Dr. Singh, for your time to join us. Your presence and dedication to addressing the HKH region's challenges are really inspiring. The Hindu Kush Himalayan region, beyond any doubt, is a global asset. As we move forward from this event, let us carry the spirit of collaboration and shared responsibility, working hand in hand and ensure a sustainable and resilient future for the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, its people and the environment, the benefits of which go far beyond the Hindu Kush Himalayan region. Thank you everyone for your active participation and very valuable contributions. Let us continue this vital conversation and turn our shared vision into meaningful actions. Together, we can work towards a more sustainable and resilient future for this part of our planet. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention.